Okay. Hi, most of you know me. I'm Ness, so I don't really need to introduce myself.
No, please do. I don't remember who you are.
Oh, good. So, to cut a long story short, last year I bought this machine because I wanted to make Battlefield from Final Fantasy 12. And stupidly, I decided that I would spend most of the year learning how to use it. And stressing and crying whilst I came up with this horrible embroidery piece that I think looks pretty good and would quite like to share the vague kind of process with how I went through it. I mean, I haven't done that much embroidery beyond that, so this is really more a talk through how I did that and a few other pieces. So if you're at a level more advanced than me, then please feel free to chip in and stuff. So.
You say please leave.
When I first bought the machine, I found that there were many choices. Too many choices really to choose from for a basic kind of machine. A lot of the computerized machines do kind of really standard stuff where you get like a tiny ring thing and you do the kind of basic stitching around that, which I find really hard. I can't do freehand embroidery. I'm not very good at hand embroidery, and I really wanted to create something that looked very embroidered, but I really just didn't have the time and patience to be hand stitching, particularly because I'm not very good at hand stitching. So I opted for the machine. I like the look of machine embroidery, and I wanted to practice a few things, test out a few things, and see exactly how I could get that to kind of flatten down into the piece itself, to look like a kind of old weathered piece, and possibly even to look like it's hand embroidered, but more to kind of trick the eye into that rather than actually doing it. So yeah, when you first choose your machine, obviously you're looking between your machine or hand embroidery, or whether you want to do both. A lot of like the outline on this, I hand embroidered around, just to kind of make it pop from the fabric a bit more. So you've got the kind of leatherette effect, and then the embroidery is stitched onto satin, which is then cut around and appliqued onto there, and then that's stitched around with regular embroidery thread. So there's lots of aspects to it, lots of elements, and even within that you break that down into tiny patterns, create the pattern, applique that onto the fabric, and then rinse and repeat. So there's bits that overlap, there's bits of random applique all over it. There's a lot of elements. So yeah, the other thing is, what are you making with it? Do you want to go into more kind of professional level stuff, or do you just want to create a few pieces, a few individual pieces? Like, you know, I'm creating that. I don't want to create that to sell. I want to create that to wear, hopefully on a long-term basis. But I don't want to be selling patches, that kind of thing. So for me, this machine kind of ticked all those boxes. Required functionality, this one has USB, a lot of the older ones don't. This one also allows, this one also allows patterns that you've created yourself, which you create with digitization software, which I'll come to in a second. This one's also the 500D, which is the model above this, is slightly faster. A lot of people online seem to prefer it, but this one came with the benefit of being a little bit slower, but also a little bit cheaper. So you want to think about this. This was around £500. This is really kind of an entry-level model for stuff that you can digitize and create on. At the end of the day, as most of you know who own sewing machines, they don't really age. Like, if you've got a computerized sewing machine, it's really not going to go out of fashion. You might add a few more stitches in later models, but you're not really adding that much in later models. So this isn't going to go out of date. It's not going to lose its value particularly, and it does the job I want it to. So it's all good. And yeah, once you've bought what you want, you have a play with it, get used to it, get used to what it can do, its features. This one comes with 2 hoops. Some of them you can add extra hoops. This is like the biggest one this one does. So with this, I was sort of planning towards the largest size pieces, like this sort of thing. ensuring that I could plot that onto there, and then that can be sewn onto the fabric. So you've got to kind of work with what you've got. Some bits you break down into pieces. You can see here that's stitched between 2 pieces, and there's a third coming in there.
Yes,
But
hold it up. I can't see.
no. Right. So here's an embroidery. So yeah, there's lots of pieces here. So this is the largest hoop size that this manages to do. With this bit, for instance, this is broken down into, I think, 3 different parts. So we've got one bit here, touches there, this bit comes around here. There are limitations, obviously. If you're hand embroidering, you don't have the same kind of limitations. You can buy massive hoops. But with this, your machine will only go up to a certain size, and you'll have to kind of work with that. Turns out with this, obviously layering it works quite well. You can work that kind of thing into your design and make it look good, but it's obviously knowing what you've got, what you can do with your machine, and working with it from there. So, yeah. It's also quite hardy. So I was terrified when I made this that it was going to all fall apart, but it's, you know, people come up to it and I'm like, oh, let me touch it, it's fine. Yeah, it's I was terrified like the stitches would come out or something, you know, like you make something like, this takes ages, like each bit of this, it's like at least an hour or so, and you're constantly kind of remaking bits to check where your tension's gone and that kind of thing. So each bit is like hours on end, just testing bits and then remaking it and remoulding the whole thing. So yeah, it's a long process, but it's very, very steady, which is good. Strong and steady. I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Okay, so patenting a project is obviously your first stage. This is quite obviously supposed to look like this, I hope. So, what am I saying? So, with this I started by creating the actual pattern itself. So, just a base layer pattern of how it would shape around my body. And from there, I could draw the design onto that pattern itself. So I had different panels. So your front panel would be from here to here, and then you've got your cut-off point there, and here, where you've obviously got the bottom bit stitched on. So I knew the area I had to work with. And then you can kind of, because obviously you're scaling to the human body, no anime, no video game character is really within kind of natural proportions. So you've got to kind of be a little bit creative and work with what your body looks like in relation to the anime character, and try and kind of scale and keep that proportion, you know, how you want it, because you want to create the illusion that it looks just like that, even if, you know, there are bits that are slightly off, because, you know, as I said, no human body is exactly the same as an anime character's body. His legs are ridiculous. Like, when I made those trousers, I was like, okay, so he's got like this applique bit here, fine. But then I'm like, but his knee is super close to both of them, because like, why is his knee so low down? Like, how does this work?
Plus, no anime character has ever heard of a zip. At least
Yeah.
that wasn't there.
Exactly. So yeah, a lot of the pattern process is about doing that. And what I found really helpful was actually sketching it onto the pattern that I created. And yeah, as I said, scaling important, sketching onto it. I've already said that, that's fine. Let's go. More patterning. So this is what I came up with for my my initial design, which looks terrible. But actually it's it works quite well. So if you see, like here, this is actually the bound of the paper, and then I had like bits that went sort of over. So I knew that that was going to be sewn into the seam. So I had like a sort of tab where that was created over, just so that blended like better into the seam. And again here, you've got that extra kind of seam allowance. The reason I did this in different colours wasn't just because I ran out of pens, but it was so I could identify which bits were going to be in which area. Wait. So this is one piece, this is one piece, it actually stops there, and that's another 2 pieces, but that was in progress when we did that. But this was then cut down into 2. It just shows you where each bit is. Also, these lines here, that's where he's got like little tiny holes at the top. So that was just about scaling exactly where they were with relation to each bit, just so I could go, okay, it's this kind of weird leafy bit here. I know that's between like the 5th and 6th of those dots. So it's just, again, the scaling process. But yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect to this stage. Every time you're drawing out designs, it's about kind of modifying, and like these squares are terrible. Like they were improved over time. But in sketching, it's working out exactly what it's going to look like. This bit has gone over a few times, it's practicing. So this is, after I'd loaded it, I scanned that design, loaded it into Photoshop. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I prefer to load it into Photoshop, clean up the image, and then load it into a digitalization package. But there are lots of different ways you can do it. That's just my preferred way of doing it. It's a lot easier. I did this by hand and then kind of clean it up with a mouse. I now have a Surface Pro which has kind of touch screen, which is such a godsend. Like, I can't recommend that kind of thing enough because it helps so much in terms of sketching and in terms of getting your final design to just like be a lot cleaner in terms of edges. This took me a lot longer than it should because of it. So this is where is this? This is where it's being loaded into the digitalization package that I use. Again, there's a lot of different options. They all cost quite a lot of money. I chose SoArt Pro, which is, it sets you back about £70, and then there's SoArt Pro, where you can modify your stitches after you've created it. Again, it's not cheap, but once you've kind of got that initial cost out of the way, then there's not really much you're going to be spending on it apart from the fabric and your threads and that kind of thing. But that's nothing in comparison to what you've already spent, so it's fine. So this is when it's loaded into the thing. All these numbers correspond to different stitches. So this is where, I think, where it's worked out the outline. All these numbers are where it's going around different bits. It will create a kind of, if you auto-stitch, it creates a numeric pattern of exactly where it's going to go, what it's going to do, and then you can go around that and modify it, work out exactly what order you want it to do things, or if it's doing something ridiculous, then obviously modify that. If you want it manually, you can change your stitch length, you can change your separation. I've got examples here where I did. This is, so I'm cosplaying someone from FMA at the weekend, so I decided to do a really sketchy, I want to do like a super kind of sketchy looking embroidered design of the homunculus design. So I tried with different separations. This is like a separation of 30, stitch length of 30, and a 0 angle. You can see that's pretty bad. Didn't really come out with the kind of sketchy look I wanted, but it's a start. So from there, I then changed that to, this is number 2. This is separation of 15, length of 20, angle of 20. So again, you've got your kind of sketchy look. Ignore kind of loose threads like this. This is where it's kind of changed between different colours, and I haven't cut that. So that's just part of the process. So that's number 2. So again, it's sketchy, but it's too sketchy. It's not like what I was looking for. It's beautiful, it's art.
Looking at the little star in the middle, it's like,
do you know what? The star is still even in the third one, the star's still terrible because I didn't bother screwing it up because it was kind of hand sketched, and then yeah. So third one I like quite a lot. There's still bits coming through, but I quite like that because I put it against kind of black wall, so you can kind of see that coming through it, and it looks really effective. So in the end, I went with this kind of one. I didn't use the yellow and red. That's just to show you the different colorations I used, but that came up with a much better effect than I wanted. But again, it's about testing out what your machine can do, the different stitch lengths, separation, that kind of thing.
Is the square frame part of the process, or did you have that on there? Is the square frame around your test room part of the process?
Right, so the square frame, when it does outlines, I can only really talk about this with the package that I use, but when it does outlines, it tends to go, so it'll get to the end of the outline on the piece, and then it goes, okay, what the hell do I do? And it goes, wait, I still need to do a bit around the other side. So it comes off, does a square round, and then goes back to the bit it wants to do. Which is fine, because obviously you're going to cut around that, so it doesn't matter. Anything outside of the frame of what you want doesn't matter at all. It's just your machine trying to logic the design that you've done.
Sometimes your logic can be a little bit broken.
Yeah.
You find where it goes like, oh, I need to do this bit, then I need to do this bit, you'll jump around more than you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's really important with auto stitching, that like sometimes I'll do it with different stitch lengths and stuff and be like, okay, I don't really like this, and I don't really like how I've done it, because the machine gets confused and then it gets stuck in one bit and creates like what we call a bobbin baby, or I call a bobbin baby. And that's where it kind of bunches up, so you've got like your bobbin thread and your main thread like in the middle, and you're like, what the hell do I do here? I spent 2 hours on this. Yeah. It also does tend to help with that, because it understands like where your kind of points of sort of extra pressure are going to be, and kind of avoids doing all stitching in that place at the same time. With this kind of thing, which I'll talk about in a second, there's a lot of help, because this is sort of lace design. And when I designed it, I was like, oh, you can have loads of holes in it, it's fine. My machine didn't like that. So the amount of times it kind of got stuck in the middle of it, it's like... and I also found with that different threads this machine doesn't like. So it loves the sulky thread, it's fantastic. This one, which is supposed to be machine embroidery, really nice parchment thread, it hates it. Like every single time, it's too thick, gets stuck, makes a horrible mess. Sometimes also it gets stuck, so you get little bits of fluff stuck in there, so you have to clean it quite frequently. What was I talking about with this? Let's go back to it. Before I get distracted by this one. So with Belfier, again, what I wanted to create was a kind of a blend of colours to create something that looks like old, kind of weathered, worn embroidery. And you know when you go to a museum and you're like, wow, okay, so I like the way those colours kind of blend. Up close, obviously you can see, you know, you've got your dark green here, your light green, your gold, that kind of thing. But from a distance, it looks splendid. And I did it on satin because satin kind of, it almost spreads. Like, you know, anyone who's got tattoos knows that eventually the ink under the skin will spread. And that's the kind of thing I want to do with that. So what I always look at with satin is that because the way the fibres are, it looks like it spreads. So I was like, let's try on satin. I mean, no one talks about satin, but maybe it's fine. And it creates the effect I wanted. So I think with this kind of thing, it is about kind of playing the fabric, seeing how they lie, and not being worried. Like with colours, obviously, there's lots of different colours in there. And as I said up close, it can look a little bit haphazard. You know, why is there green in that? I mean, there is green in the original design, but it's sort of about creating that illusion from a distance and up close. Even if the up close looks a little bit strange, I guess. What did I put? I think I said that. Oh, so when you create your design, I always try and label them logically. So. No, it doesn't like me. Right, so on here, if we go to my USB, we have, it's very slow. So all of these things are labelled, well not all of them actually, a lot of them are labelled logically. So if we go 911 here, that's part 9. 1 was whether it was this side or this side, so I think 1 corresponds to this side, 2 corresponds to that side, and then I think the other one was if it was a modified version. So it just made it easier for me to know exactly how many pieces I was making, exactly where they were going, and to kind of work out exactly what the hell I was doing. But also you can name it things like butt or abs, that's fine too. And I've got quite a few designs named like that, that's fine.
So you have all the files called bar.
That's Shelley.
Got one, we've got two.
The other thing, and this is personal preference, but the digitalization package I use, I tend to do the colours much more vibrant than I'm actually going to use. I know what each colour corresponds to, but when I'm doing the design, I'll go, okay, we do dark green here, light green here, but there'll be a massive difference between them when the threads I'm using are actually quite subtle. But I'll obviously name those threads what I want them to be. It's just so when I look at that design itself, I can be like, okay, I know exactly where things are going. I can visualize this immediately, which is a lot harder for me to do if I've done it in the exact colors. But again, that's personal preference. It's just a way that my brain likes to see things when I've designed. So yeah, you'll find with this, it's all personal preference. And so here's the homunculus design with my terrible star in the middle, which obviously turned out beautifully. Again, like I said earlier, with digitalization, there's lots of different packages you can use. Whether you want to digitize or edit, as I said, I've got two different ones, but I mainly use it for digitalization. And if I want to do editing, it's very minor stitch editing, it's nothing too major. You can get proprietary software. I looked at the Genome proprietary software and I wasn't convinced it was great. But a lot of people really got on with it. Likewise, if you get a brother machine, a lot of the high-end models come with proprietary software. That said, you're usually spending like over £1,000 on the machine itself before that, so of course the software comes with it. With this, sadly it doesn't, so you kind of have to work out what you want to use. There are a few free packages. I haven't found anything that works for me, but I did find, although all of these packages are a little bit clunky and not particularly user-friendly, they don't have the user in mind particularly. I found that this is what worked for me. Yeah, just test things out.
A lot of the software, it's all quite samey and it's not really like, you can't really do it. Even with the stuff, the high-end stuff.
Yeah.
It's all pretty much the same, you just might have a little bit more, a few more options.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it's ever been updated.
I mean, I've used, I think it's, yeah, no it doesn't, it feels like it comes from like 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, it's not user-friendly at all.
This is like when I got an overlocker and it was like the software.
They're like, these are going to be old ladies who don't know how to use this software.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it really simple but really old,
Yeah,
like paint
absolutely.
kind of thing.
Ignore that I've apparently not managed to. Yeah, in the digitalization package, you're going to be kind of merging similar colours. So in Photoshop, if I've coloured something in, there'll be lots of tiny grains where the wrong colours are. So I'd want to merge any colours that are very close to each other into one. With this, as I said before, I like to see different colours very vibrantly rendered so I can see exactly what I'm doing, but again, personal preference. So that's why I kind of left that like that. Again, digitalization thing, you're doing your final line neatening, you're doing your angle choices, you want to see how you want it to look. As I said, with that, I tried a few different methods to see what I wanted and settled on what I wanted, and it looks okay, I guess. Again, I've discussed backing fabric choice, type of outline. You can have satin stitch. You can have little tiny dogs going around it. There's lots of options, and your machine will have some inbuilt stuff, but the digitization package will also have stuff. So again, it's about playing with what it's got. Neatening stitches, reducing in significant areas. Again, discussed. There's different types of stabilizer as well. So with this, I use tear off. This is tear stabilizer. So on the back of most projects, you will be spraying this onto the back of your fabric. That just keeps it nice and firm in the thing. If you've just got your fabric and your fabric is very thin or a bit crap, it will move around and it won't get a good effect. Even if it's not. Like the only fabric I wouldn't use stabilizer for is something like wool. This is folk wool from Coscroft. is very good. And I've used that in it, and it's been absolutely fine. And I don't use stabilizer for it because it's very thick, and it stabilizes itself. Trust me. It's the spray is called stick and spray, which is exactly what it does. So I just get this from Amazon. It's, I think, about £5 a can. It lasts quite a while. You literally get your bit of fabric, you put some spray on, that's the wrong stabilizer. You get your stabilizer, you stick it to that, and then rub it down, and then you get your hoop. Once that's stuck, it's not stuck. And then with your hoop, you will right. Put that over the top. Obviously, you want to cut it down to the right size, and then put your hoop over the top of that, the right way out. I'm going to do it here. Yeah, so we got your hoop. There's too much fabric here, and I haven't stabilised it, so this is a good start. Find where the edges of your hoop are, which is bad because I haven't actually opened that enough. Yeah, it's like with a normal embroidery hoop. You're putting your thing in and stabilising it, and making it nice and firm.
Do you find spray better to use than iron-on?
Yeah, I quite like it. I don't really like iron-on interfacing though. So again, it's sort of personal preference. I don't know with like iron-on interfacing if you get the kind of like little bumps left over or anything, because sometimes I don't know, sometimes I buy really terrible interfacing. So.
I've always found it just doesn't work, just get stuck together. So.
Yeah. But this is sort of one I made earlier, and as with any kind of embroidery, you want to keep it as taut as possible in there, which is, I thought was, but isn't. So you kind of, once you've tightened it up, you kind of go around and stuff, and then you can install it. Yeah, testing. This is this is tearaway. So with the tearaway, once you've done your design, obviously you don't need that anymore, and you really don't want that in your final piece. So you can do this. Get rid of this crap. Like this. No. And yeah, there it is. Obviously, once you cut the outline, the random outline it does, you can then tear away some more. But your objective there is obviously to get most of that off. Anything that's still within the design itself, you keep. Good way to tell if your tension's good. I think the tension's a little bit off there actually. But you want plenty of kind of bobbin thread colour coming through, but you don't want too much. So you want the sort of outline, but not the full bobbin thread. So you want your sort of red. If you've got too much outline or too much bobbin thread, then that will be fairly obvious, and you'll start to see on this side your bobbin thread coming through and that kind of thing. So it will be obvious. You can change your tension really easily, just like any machine with your little thing here. Magic. There's lots of settings on the machine. This one can go really fast, and when it does, sometimes it messes up because it loses stitches. Sometimes it does fine. Again, it really depends on your fabric. If you've got super thick fabric, then and you use a super fast stitch, it's probably going to mess up, and you'll probably have to kind of go back a few stitches. But you don't have to start the whole thing again. You can go back a few stitches, work out where it went wrong, take everything off, work out, restabilize everything, go back to it. You won't lose your entire project if it messes up a few stitches, which I should have beared in mind. Yeah, that works. When I first did this, because the amount of ones I threw away when I was like, no, this is rubbish, it's all gone wrong, when all I need to do is go back a few stitches and redo it. So again, testing. Everything is about working out the work. So yeah, check the back, tearaway stabilizer, trim round edges design. On this one, I said I did applique with sort of matching thread to get it to blend in better, and then I hand sewed around it. Again, personal preference. You might go for a contrast stitch. Whatever you want to do, you're sewing that design onto your backing. And that's that. Wash away stabilizers quickly is this kind of thing. So a wash away stabiliser you'd want on its own. So that's a bit. So this is tear away, which is a bit more kind of resilient. Wash away, you put on its own, so you don't have any fabric. You want to have like your bobbin thread and your top thread as a sort of matching thing, because otherwise you can't then turn it over and pretend it's exactly the same. With this, I went with sort of parchment coloured thread, but not the one my machine hates. And with that, I created lots of exactly the same things. So I created about 10 of the same thing on one piece, made them with the machine, then rinsed it in hot water, dried them for a while, and they came out as sort of little space invaders, which are then sewed onto here. But that's sort of standing lace design, so you can see through it. You've got little holes and stuff. Little passes around. I'm going to pass this to Mel. She knows what she's doing. And yeah, you can combine them. I had bits on Balfour where I had like 2 different layers, which created a different kind of effect with that. They're quite firm once you've done that though, so the stabiliser almost creates a sort of tacky layer to it. It's not tacky afterwards, but it does create a kind of firmness, which is a little more difficult to sew. So I kind of hand sewed those together. And again, this one here, where I've got this like a little wicker man, there's like a little upside down V shape under that. So there's like 2 different layers there to create extra depth. Yeah, so lots of things you can get from it. So the best way to do is either keep saying to experiment, invest in time, invest in money, and enjoy the process. And maybe we can sew something now. Do we have time?
Yes.
Okay. What do we want to sew?
Cat.
A cat. I'm not sure I've got the colours for the cat. A butt.
You're
Yeah,
you said you had a butt file.
I do. Well, I do a butt file, but it's a Balfour butt file, so it's kind of a legitimate butt. It does have a built-in cat. So yeah, let's go with the sort of built-in design. It might. Okay. So let's start from the beginning with this machine. So this is a machine. It's really heavy, and you can't use it as a handbag. It's very heavy, so you can't like put your wallet in it as it is. It's you're going to build muscle carrying this around basically. But luckily, as with most machines, it comes with little carry handles, so you can do that if you want to, but none of us want to.
Just an embroidery machine or
This is just an embroidery machine. So yes, there are some that you can get that do both. I have a regular computerized sewing machine on one end of my table, and an embroidery machine on the other end of the table. And for Christmas dinner, I moved both off, but we never move them otherwise. Because my husband over there. So with this, it's got, you don't have like a foot pedal or anything, you just got your basic on switch. You do have a very slow machine. It's not too slow, it's usually the USB that's the issue there. Most machines, as I said earlier, come with preloaded designs. So this has some crappy flowers. What else do we have? I can't see from the side. We've got a teapot. Yeah. A lot of these designs are very nice, with lots of different stitches, lots of different angles, and yeah, much better than some of the things that I've done. But it's fine. There are no weaves in here. Leaves. There are lots of leaves. Apparently embroidery is popular for leaves. So, yeah, we can go for a fish.
Is there a diagnosis file? Different stitch types, different thread use.
Yeah, there's some beautiful things
Sewing
here.
machine.
If, however, you want to go for your designs, you can go into your USB. So you go. Oh, what I should have said for digitalization packages, if you don't have a proprietary one, it will output to lots of different things. This machine does JEF files, .jef. Yeah, JEF files. This creates many JEFs, but other machines have different formats. So whatever package you use, you want to ensure that it creates those, and when you output them, outputs to that. So it will recognise those in here. Obviously, it's recognised our terrible homunculus designs. Yeah. When you click on it, it tells you what hoop size it wants to use for that. If you want to edit what hoop size, you can go into options either. Alright, calm down. Either on here by clicking edit. Yeah, and then we can get a mode and set. This is really difficult upside down. And then you've got your options there. So you can change your size, and that can go up or down by about 10%. Oh, really ignore the makeup lines in there, because like at the top I left it slightly too high, and I always get foundation on it, and I don't know how to do anything about that because I'm a terrible human being. So yeah, you can change your size very slightly, so down by about 10%. So if you go, it's just slightly off, then you can change it slightly. If you need to change it more, you have to go back to digitalization software, or your kind of modifying software, change your stitches around a little bit. Minor edits, minor tweaks are really easy to do, but it takes a little bit of time switching between your laptop and your machine, unless you've only got tiny things to do with it. So let's get out of that. If you don't want that.
How's it do with multiple colours? What's the process? Do you have to keep switching it? Or
Yes. So when you get to the end of a colour, it will it will tell you to raise the bar and change the colour. It will tell you exactly what colour it wants after that. So let's just choose the thing. Let's go with it. Because yeah, it'll take a little while to do as well. So it's really noisy as well. So I'm a little bit conscious of having it going on at the same time. Should you have a butterfly? Yeah. Right. So it wants a hoop size AF, which is the tiny one. I want the tiny one. Okay. I can't do this in this angle. Right, fine. Let's load this one. So this is AF, is it? Yeah. Right, so AF is the small one. Let's use the wall, why not? Let's splash out. Okay, so I'm going to use the wall with no stabilizer because I'm a rebel like that. Like that. Right, it's in. It's fairly stable. It's not in. It's very fiddly. It's a fun process. Okay, so yeah, you want it to be not like that. I make mistakes, so you don't have to. Right, so as with any hoop, you're gonna get it nice and tight now. And then again, do that without it falling out this time. I'm gonna try and do this magic of doing this like this. Right, so it doesn't matter if you've got a bit left over, but you don't want it hanging everywhere. So like with any machine, you've got your bobbin. I'm quite cheeky with my bobbin thread in that I use this for every bobbin because it does, like, you can basically just leave it behind this bobbin. You don't have to have your foot on the foot pedal, just leave it, get it doing its thing. It does really nice, really good tight bobbins. And I know this is really exciting, and it's really easy to do. So you basically, with bobbin thread, you don't even have to take your regular thread out. You have that going round here, round this little hoop at the top, and then over to here where it locks in. Once that's locked there, it recognises it's in bobbin threading mode, so there. So as soon as you press your on button here, it will then thread your bobbin. And it's so much easier than doing it on a normal machine. So I would recommend, if you have one of these,
Just for the bobbin.
Yeah, seriously. Buy one of these. Just for the bobbins, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I think that might be a genome thing. I think that might be a genome thing because my normal
yours-
sewing machine does the exact same thing,
Oh,
and it's a genome.
really? Okay. Well, my regular sewing machine's a brother, and it does horrible bobbins.
Mine's a
By genome.
Mine's a
Well, actually, it does nice ones, but they take a while.
I think it does, I just haven't figured out how we do it yet.
Okay, so with your bobbin, you're going to put it in, like, looping round. This is really difficult from this angle, but here we go. And then, this is way less difficult to thread than an overlocker, which you'll be pleased to know. So we're going down here, we're going up here, down again, and then
This is exactly how my genome is. I like genomes.
I like to know.
Threading a needle while people watch.
I know, it's amazing. Here's how to thread a sewing machine. It's actually really difficult to thread.
Oh, cool.
You're very practical. Yeah.
It will auto.
And maybe don't go like that. Right, so one thing this does is you want your bobbin thread to come up, so you're going to wind once you've thread. No, like that. I can't see from this angle. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Right, so you want to go down and pull up your bobbin thread. There it comes. Open. Comes through, and then you go pull up through. There you go. And have too much thread. Make sure that's hooked behind. Right, and then you can put your hoop in. So your hoop has a little locking mechanism. And is that up? It is up. Good. Behaving. Right. So press it down, turn it to lock it in. Once it's locked in, you can feel it's in. If you haven't locked it in properly, it will break. And then you'll be terrified your machine's broken. It probably won't be, but it could be. So happy days. Now we're going to make a really beautiful butterfly, which currently takes 17 minutes. Top threads in. Right, that's way too much top threads in. It has a choppy thing here. Choppy thing.
Oh, I've got
Look at that.
I think he's just genome machines are great now.
Genome machines are great. Okay. So with this, we've got 5 colours. It takes 17 minutes apparently on this setting. I can probably speed it up. If it's on the sped up setting, it'll probably take maybe 15 minutes. It won't like speed it up that much, but possibly enough if you're in a rush. If not, then just enjoy the harmonious sound of your machine for the rest of the day. Yeah. Yeah. So it says it's ready to sew, so there's nothing else you need to do. Put this down. Right, so you've got your thing down, and then we're going to press start. Here it goes. Okay, so here it thinks it wants bright blue. What it's actually going is green. But it doesn't know that, so that's fine. So what it's doing in this case is it's plotting out where it's going to sew that. So it's doing a really basic stitch of this portion of wing, and then it's going to sew over that. So it's basically just mapped exactly where it's going, and then it's going to go over it with the stitches at the end it wants to. And on more. Maybe. Oh, and it'll take a You can sing Disney while you wait, it's fine. So as it goes down, it will obviously tell you how long it's got left. That doesn't factor in faffing around changing threads, so give yourself probably an extra 5 minutes where you're going to be changing threads between, because it does take time and it's annoying. If you're not happy with it, you can stop it at any point. Remove that, that's fine. Do whatever you want. Yes, you can start again. and it'll start off slowly and then kind of get back into its routine and stuff, and that's fine, yeah. So sometimes if I've got a long project on it, I'll let it go for a while and then I'll switch it off, go out and come back to it. If you're not happy with it because it misses a stitch for whatever reason, and sometimes it does that just to troll you, is you can stop this, go up, and then this will take it back by more than a step, but then you can do kind of incremental steps as well. So you can take it back by, I don't want to take it back to the beginning because it'll be annoying. But yeah, it knows exactly how many stitches. So at the moment it's done 487 stitches. It's going to go a lot higher than that. I think the maximum, like each machine has a maximum number of stitches it can do per pattern, and a maximum file size as well, so be aware of that. The other thing is, even though your hoop is of a specific size, the actual size it can sew and it will recognise as a machine is this size. It's not the whole hoop size. So if you go even a millimetre over that, it will not even recognise it as a file. It won't show up in the machine, and you can't do anything with it. You have to go back to whatever package you're using, scale it down, try again, because it's annoying.
Can you set those limits in the application? Can you set the limits in the application so you don't need that?
Some applications, but it's kind of like I found with the one I use, it's just working out like you know exactly what your machine can do, and you just have to kind of work with that. With this, this allows you to kind of plot out exactly where it's going to be on there as well, so you've got your starting point as well. So when I was creating that, working out where exactly that would be within that frame when it eventually went onto here was really useful. Oh, right, calm down. So yeah, if you raise the press foot, it will know. It knows what you're doing at all times. Really annoying. Yes?
When you're sleeping.
Yes. It's a very creepy machine. Yeah, it's actually being fairly quiet today. This is a lot quieter than it usually is. Yeah. Maybe we should do that, because it's usually really noisy. Hey, I've learned something.
My 3D printer found this first, and then ended up on a concrete block and it was silent.
It's too many syllables.
So probably just
Yeah, I think maybe. Right, I'm going to wait till it gets to the end of this colour. Or maybe I'm not. Well, it wants to do the entire wing. It's only done half at the moment, so. For smaller bits, sometimes it speeds up randomly, and you'll think it's about to take off. Again, it's kind of creating a sketch of where it's going to go, so you'll immediately see that kind of underlayer where it's going to boot, exactly what it's doing, and then sew over the top of it. And you can also immediately see with this, I think the stitch the tension isn't as good as it could be. It looks a bit rough. Maybe don't touch it when it's doing it. But again, it's depending on what fabric you're using, what stabilizer you're using, everything like that. There's lots of different factors to take into account. This is hell. Like this is embroidery thread apparently. And again, my machine doesn't like it. So what this does is it's very thin. So I thought thin fabric, thin thread, that'll be fine. And what it really likes doing is it sort of disintegrates the metallic thread as it comes up. So when it gets into a really excitable bit, it's like, and then you get like half of a thread left, and the rest is kind of buckled all around the top. Yeah. I haven't worked out what to do with that apart from just not using metallic thread. I also decided that for this kind of thing, whilst metallic thread I thought might create a nice effect in certain places, actually I really like the kind of dull effect because it looked more like a sort of old antique thing. So luckily I haven't had to use this too much yet. But again, limits of the machine. my machine apparently doesn't like really, really thin metallic thread, and it really doesn't like really thick parchment thread.
Would it
So-
maybe be if it, because it's going fast, that it's
Yeah, I think
potentially something that you could do on a slower
with this one, I tried many ways because that was for those sort of bits there. So I tried it so many times, and even on the slower speed on my machine, it was still like just creating
just using all my
monstrosities.
same
Yeah,
machines,
yeah. So I think this is very, very slightly too thick. I think on a better machine, like a higher end machine, it would probably be fine. With my machine, unfortunately, it's just something it doesn't want to have anything to do with. So with all the will in the world, you're not going to get the result you want from something that the machine can't handle, and that's okay, because there are other threads that do exactly the same thing. And this has, this is created a bit more. It's nearly done a second wing, but it is still quite loose. So I'll do what?
They're asking if you can change
You can change the stitches.
Oh, sorry. let me stop.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I think on some machines you can change like the maximum stitch speed for
Yeah.
so that it doesn't get quite so much. Obviously, it will take longer.
Yeah, yeah.
Change the stitch speed.
Yeah. So this can, but there are still threads that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
still
Like
won't go
mine,
for. I'm sure yours
some
does the same
metallic
thing.
threads and I'm a bit too wary about finding some of them. Some of them
I've never had any success in metallic threads, so if you have, like, honestly, please.
Branded metallic threads, they're
Yeah.
fine, but some of the like tertiary they get more
Yeah. I'll have to poke your brain about this. Because if you've got a way to make it work, that would be very useful.
I haven't used my machine much, I've used it on a couple of little projects. First project I used it on was a big learning curve.
Yeah.
I learned a lot when I did it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Doing a huge project, it's that learning curve that kind of makes you learn how these things work and exactly what you want to
It
do
was
with
great
them.
because I learned all the limitations of the machine on like one project.
Yeah, same.
It was a very steep learning curve.
Okay, so I'm going to grab this, even though it's only half a wing. Here we go. This is our finished, or not so much. So we'll chop through it, and we won't. We will chop through it. Oh my god, the thread cut is amazing! So actually, yeah, it's not bad, but I would probably increase tension a little bit there. You can see there's a few stitches that are just a little bit too loose. And again, that's just because whatever fabric I was using on before, I was using like one tension, but I should have used it, and that's fine. And I'll pass you on this wing. So you can see on there, you can see the underlayer that it created first, and then stitching it's done over the top. Again, it's not perfect. It's the tension is off on that one, but it just shows you what it's trying to create at the time. Does anyone have any questions about the machine, or want to have a look at anything it does, or have a play with it? Like honestly, they're very hardy machines. I haven't had too many problems. The only thing, the really stupid thing I've done, so sometimes when you switch it off, the arm at the back, well in fact, if you just switch it off, the arm at the back doesn't immediately lock back to where it should, which is nice and snugly in here. So what I did once was I got my hoop, and I was like, oh, I've just got to be really tidy today, for once. And I was like, I'll just hang the hoop off the back here, that's fine. And the next time I used the machine, I switched it on, and the machine was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's just do the thing. I'm not going to demonstrate. So switch it off, right, so this stays out. When you switch it back on, it's like, oh no, wait, this is out, the arm shouldn't be out. Let's put the arm back in. So it goes back, and it was like, so don't do that. So with maintenance, there aren't actually that many kind of parts that kind of come off with or anything. I mean, the arm is the most fragile bit, that's the bit obviously you want to protect. If you have to change your bobbin thread partway through, which sometimes you will, and it will tell you if it's got a bit it's doing, it doesn't have enough bobbin thread left for it, it will tell you, and you can either change your bobbin thread at the beginning of that part of the project, or you can wait until halfway through and be like, wait, I actually don't know how much bobbin thread is there, maybe I should actually check that, because sometimes it'll try and carry on, and then you have a horrible piece with no bobbin thread in it. So it's always best to do it then. Yeah, the fragile bits. Your fragile bits are always going to be that kind of thing. And I can't think of much I've had to do apart from obviously changing needles, that kind of thing. It's not too much I've been concerned about with it.
How about time frames for pieces? How long does it take?
So I gave myself a lot of time for Belfia because obviously I haven't made anything like that before. I think that whole project took me about 6 months, and most of that was figuring out embroidery and stuff. If I did that now, the embroidery part would take a lot less time. I wouldn't necessarily want to put a number on it, but I think for each component, from first creating that design to actually sewing it, with testing and stuff, I don't know, I would probably spend at least half a day on each part that's going to be sewn. And that's if I'm really sure of that part of the design. If not, then I could easily spend a day or so on each part. So yeah, time frame is usually important. You can't con crunch with this, unfortunately, because I know a lot of people enjoy con crunching. But obviously, the results you get from it are hopefully worthwhile. Hopefully, are the kind of thing you want. So yeah, that's the machine. Does anyone else have any questions? No.
So all of the bits that you put onto About here,
Yeah.
they're all done and then cut out and appliqued onto it?
Yeah.
Can it do sort of, you put in the part of the costume you want to have the embroidery on and then it embroidered directly onto it?
Yes, but it's with this I wouldn't do it because I was working onto leatherette and that's the kind of fabric I wouldn't necessarily want to risk on here because I think it can do it, and I have cheekily tried a few times and it's been okay.
Does it still draw the weird square?
Yeah, it does. But it doesn't respond as well to that fabric. The other thing with that was I wanted to create the kind of the flattened kind of spread design, so that worked out quite well. But yes, if you've got your panel, you know exactly where it's going. Obviously, you can measure out exactly where it's going to be with your handy thing. So as long as you've measured out exactly on that, yes, you can do it onto that. But it's a little more risky. So yeah, go for it. If you like that kind of risk, then you do.
Have you ever tried to do it where you had, like, so you said you split that into pieces, but did you try and do it where you tried to do one part, then move the fabric along, and then try to do the other part?
No.
I know some people, I've seen some people
Yes,
try that.
I think if you are working onto the panel directly, then yeah, you absolutely could do that, and that would be fine. But my preference for this is kind of containing it into small portions because it can very, very quickly get very unwieldy. And if, for me, creating like small parts of something and turning it into a whole works really well as a design process. Obviously everyone differs in that respect, but I find kind of creating sort of compartments for each thing works really well. But yeah, again, it's the risk of working directly onto your base fabric, which isn't something I want to do with this, but in future projects I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. It just, again, depends on what you want to do. So. Are there any other questions? James is going.
Just
Yeah.
What sort of like thickness restriction? Because I know you said leatherette is probably not a great one, but I can understand that's got such high tension. But like, if I did something like a duffel or something, you know, that's quite thick.
I've used very thick velvet,
Yeah.
like upholstery grade velvet,
Yeah.
and it does do okay, but don't use double thickness
Okay.
because it won't like
Yeah.
it.
And some machines do better than others. Usually a machine will list exactly what fabrics it likes. That doesn't mean you can't use others. And again, do feel free to experiment, but try and keep vaguely in line with what your machine says it can do. Because whoever created that machine generally knows a little bit better. As I said, I have tried leatherette in this. It does work, but on smaller pieces, and I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable having that like on a full kind of scale piece, like any of that basically. So yeah, it's kind of up to you how you go about that, but try and try and maintain it within the lines of the machine, because obviously you don't want to destroy your machine in the process. If you spent a lot of money on a machine, the last thing you want to do is put a fabric it doesn't like in there and then destroy it. So yeah.
Try a test piece first, a small
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, small test piece is the way to go. And obviously with this, things like letters, it's got lots of letters built in, and they're really small projects that it can do. They take maybe 5 minutes a piece, and they're really, really good ways to test things. So yeah, built-in stuff is the way to go in terms of testing whether it'll handle it. But again, if you're unsure, check what your machine can do and what it can handle. And there's no problem with creating a piece and then sewing off to another piece. That's, you know, I like applique too, it's fine. So yeah.